What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Okay, so now we're in Deuteronomy 32. Little bit of context for those who might have missed. The previous chapter, especially at the end, kind of laid out the idea that, now it doesn't say how soon, but eventually the Israelites will turn away from God, and this song that we're about to hear from Moses is supposed to kind of serve as a testament to that and a witness against the people when it does inevitably happen that they're the ones in the wrongdoing. God knows this is going to happen, so, whenever y'all end up doing this stuff, you can come back to this and realize that, oh, hey, yeah, we're the ones in the wrong here. So anyway, Deuteronomy 32, here we go. And this is Moses speaking / singing, I guess, I would assume. Because, actually, let me go back real quick. It does say Moses recited this entire song. Recited doesn't necessarily mean he sang, but I digress. It's definitely Moses saying this, though. So, here we go. Listen, O heavens, and I will speak. Hear, O earth, the words that I say. Let my teaching fall on you like rain. Let my speech settle like dew. Let my words fall like rain on tender grass, like gentle showers on young plants. I will proclaim the name of the Lord. How glorious is our God! He is the rock. His deeds are perfect. Everything he does is just and fair. He is a faithful God who does no wrong. How just and upright he is. So, kind of introductory stuff, saying, all right, listen up, everybody. And then, kind of, declaring the righteousness of God. Which is just part of that whole equation, for lack of a better word, of okay, people messing up and turning against God is their fault. The fate that befalls them is not because of God. God is righteous and faithful. Anyway, so then verse 5, continuing that. But they have acted corruptly toward him. When they act so perversely, are they really his children? They are a deceitful and twisted generation. In this way you repay the Lord, you foolish and senseless people. Isn't he your father who created you? Has he not made you and established you? Remember the days of long ago. Think about the generations past. Ask your father, and he will inform you. Inquire of your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High assigned lands to the nations, when he divided up the human race, he established the boundaries of the peoples according to the number in his heavenly court. I'll get back to that last phrase there in a bit, because there's a footnote. But I think this section is kind of encapsulated nicely by this phrase here. When they act so perversely, are they really his children? Can they really claim to be the people of God if they act nothing like what he has told them to? Now, I am not saying that this is a defense for, disowning your children if they disobey you or different things like that. This is this is a different matter, definitely different context. You are not God. But I'm sure we'll also get to, even despite all this and amongst all that, God still wanting chances for the people to redeem themselves and turn back. But we haven't gotten there yet. And even in here with, asking your father, inquiring your elders, and that kind of stuff, like, kind of another reminder that, once these curses and all these bad things that have been predicted happen to God's people, the Israelites, they should look back on their history, on the commands God gave them, and that will help them realize that, things went wrong and how they went wrong, specifically how the people disobeyed. Okay, footnotes here. It just says the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain. Regarding which part of this, I don't know. You would figure at least the word children here, possibly this whole phrase. But anyway, it's Hebrew being a vastly different language than English. It's like you might be able to try and pick up on some context clues as to what could be said here, but ultimately, like, there's some uncertainty with translating this. And then down here at footnote B, regarding God's heavenly court, that says in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which read, the number of the sons of God. Greek version reads, the number of the angels of God. Masoretic text reads, the number of the sons of Israel. So if you go with the Masoretic text, it could have been referring to, like, because it's talking about the land being divided up, that would almost more so refer, in my mind, just to the Israelites themselves and how they get land divided amongst them in Canaan / the Promised Land. But the way that the rest of this is worded, talking about, the nations more broadly, it would almost imply that it's talking about more than just the Israelites, which is why, at least in this translation, they probably went with like the Dead Sea Scrolls and Greek, which read more like sons or angels of God. Anyway, don't have a ton of time to dwell on all these things, though, because still got a bunch of verses to go. So, I didn't really have too much else to add to that anyway, lest we get on a massive, massive tangent on what could be meant by sons of God or different things like that. Although angels is probably a little bit more understandable as to what that would mean, because, angels. But, anywho, I digress. Let's move on. Verse 9. For the people of Israel belong to the Lord. Jacob is his special possession. He found them in a desert land, in an empty, howling wasteland. He surrounded them and watched over them. He guarded them as he would guard his own eyes. Like an eagle that rouses her chicks and hovers over her young, so he spreads his wings to take them up. So he spread his wings to take them up and carried them safely on his pinions. The Lord alone guided them. They followed no foreign gods. He let them ride over the highlands and feast on the crops of the fields. He nursed them with honey from the rock and olive oil from the stony ground. He fed them yogurt from the herd and milk from the flock, together with the fat of lambs. He gave them choice rams from Bashan and goats together with the choicest wheat. You drank the finest wine made from the juice of grapes. So, now it's almost getting into, well, I shouldn't say almost. It's kind of getting into how God provided for them, as they wandered the wilderness, possibly even getting into some of the things that they will get, once they get into the Promised Land. because that was previously described as a land flowing with milk and honey. Where I'm like, wait, where's honey? There we go. So yeah, it's further emphasizing the contrast of, all right, here's God's goodness and provision, and it will probably be, going back to the other contrast of people being disobedient. Footnote there. So rather than saying as he would guard his own eyes, it would have been as he would guard, he guarded them as the pupil of his eye. I mean, it's a very similar idea there. Maybe just, I kind of assume the words as he would are kind of understood to be in this as you would look at that. So say he guarded them as he would the pupil of his eye. Because describing the people as the pupil of his eye just seems sort of odd. Anyway, all right. Moving along, verse 15. But Israel soon became fat and unruly. The people grew heavy, plump, and stuffed. Then they abandoned the God who had made them. They made light of the rock of their salvation. They stirred up his jealousy by worshipping foreign gods. They provoked his fury with detestable deeds. They offered sacrifices to demons which are not God, to gods they had not known before, to new gods only recently arrived, to gods their ancestors had never feared. You neglected the rock who had fathered you. You forgot the God who had given you birth. Again, the contrast of God's goodness and provision versus the people being unruly and evil, to put it bluntly. Interesting how they mention, new gods more specifically here. So maybe not even implying that the gods of the people they're conquering will be what trips them up, but, other people who end up living in those lands will have other different, newer gods and idols that they worship and follow. But, I don't know. I'm like, there was a footnote here. So the Hebrew, instead of Israel, says Yeshurun, which is a term of endearment for Israel. Okay. So, term of endearment, usually I hear the phrase term of endearment and I think, positive. So it was maybe in that way kind of saying, the God's chosen people, this great, wonderful nation of Israel soon became fat and unruly. They basically spoil the image that they have of being this precious, chosen, good people. Anyway. Yeah, still got a lot to go. Alright, verse 19. The Lord saw this and drew back, provoked to anger by his own sons and daughters. He said, I will abandon them, then see what becomes of them. For they are a twisted generation, children without integrity. They have roused my jealousy by worshipping things that are not God. They have provoked my anger with their useless idols. Now I will rouse their jealousy through people who are not even a people. I will provoke their anger through the foolish Gentiles. For my anger blazes forth like fire, and burns to the depths of the grave. It devours the earth and all its crops, and ignites the foundations of the mountains. I will heap disasters upon them, and shoot them down with my arrows. I will weaken them with famine, burning fever, and deadly disease. I will send the fangs of wild beasts and poisonous snakes that glide in the dust. Outside, the world will bring death, and inside, terror will strike both young men and young women, both infants and the aged. I would have annihilated them, wiping out even the memory of them. But I feared the taunt of Israel's enemy, who might misunderstand and say, our own power has triumphed. The Lord has nothing to do with this. So, yeah, lots of bad stuff happening there. And, I'm just... There was something in particular that, like, the moment I read it kind of stuck out. I mean, yeah, this last bit... Feared seems like an odd word there. But basically, God is saying, like, alright, I'm going to punish my people, my chosen people, for disobeying. But I'm not going to wipe them out entirely. Like, I want to make it clear to other people of the world that what happens to my people eventually is directly from me. It is my punishment. It is not because of other people's doing or might or anything like that. We're Gentiles here was pretty much just meant as, like, in a way, kind of a catch-all for any non-Jews. So, when it mentions, rousing jealousy through people who are not even a people, like, Gentiles were not a particular people group. It was just any non-Jews. So, it is basically God saying that, like, yeah, it might not even necessarily be particularly organized the way that, other people end up coming into power and ruling over Israel. It's just other people are gonna come in and have control because of the punishment that I bring upon my people for disobeying. Footnote there at the word grave, Hebrews says Sheol, which the meaning of the word Sheol is, or at least the understanding of it, to my knowledge, is Sheol was meant as a little bit more than just the grave. It was actually meant to be like an actual afterlife of sorts that happened underground, like within the earth practically. Some translations might also render that as the pit. But some of those concepts also sort of carry over into our modern understanding of hell. I mean, it burns to the depths of the grave. The burning part in particular there. Yeah. So, it's not even necessarily just like that God would be angry with them for the rest of their lives. It would possibly even carry over a little bit into, after their lives. Because they've disobeyed God, they're probably not really worthy of spending eternity with Him. Therefore, His anger blazes against them even beyond just life on earth. And, like, with, pre-Jesus situations and understanding of, relation with God and righteousness and things like that being far more based on, the law, the covenants, things like that. That's why, things might seem a bit more harsh relative to disobedience in the Old Testament. Or at least one of the reasons why. Anyway, okay, moving on to verse 28. But Israel is a senseless nation. The people are foolish, without understanding. Oh, that they were wise and could understand this. Oh, that they might know their fate. How could one person chase 1,000 of them, and 2 people put 10,000 to flight, unless their rock had sold them, unless the Lord had given them up? But the rock of our enemies is not like our rock, as even they recognize. Their vine grows from the vine of Sodom, from the vineyards of Gomorrah. Their grapes are poison, and their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the venom of serpents, the deadly poison of cobras. The Lord says, am I not storing up these things, sealing them away in my treasury? I will take revenge, and I will pay them back. In due time, their feet will slip. Their day of disaster will arrive, and their destiny will overtake them. So, yeah, again, Israel being disobedient. Basically, with some of this section here, right around verse 30, it's saying that, okay, yes, God's people are going to be put to flight, they're going to be conquered, ruled over, but it's going to be because of God. Like, if God was with them, and, God's blessing was upon them, then it wouldn't wind up being so easy for, other nations and people to come in and chase them away. But because God's blessing will be removed from the Israelites for their disobedience, it's only going to take like one person to chase 1,000 Israelites away. It's going to be that bad. They'll be that weak and or timid and or all these other things that would cause one person to be able to chase 1,000 of them. This part, I think, is meant to just kind of be comparing, what results from or what, like, other people groups kind of, build their kingdoms on, their understanding of things and whatnot, versus, God's blessings and, foundation. And I think verses 34 and 35 here, I'm assuming the them in question is referring to the other nations. Talking about in due time their feet will slip. I mean, it could be talking about the Israelites too, but since it was just discussing the other nations and how their grapes are poison and, their wine is venom and different things like that, I assume this is talking about the other nations, to where it's like, okay, yeah, even though other people will come in and take over Israel and, scatter God's people, their time will come as well. They'll slip up and their destiny will overtake them, as it says there. Basically, their inevitable fate will eventually come to pass, because God will also end up being angry with them for doing things God doesn't like. And we might get more on that in the next section here. Oh yeah, also, footnote. Meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain. Greek version reads, our enemies are fools. The rock of our enemies is not like our flock. And I assume that's where it would say our enemies are fools instead of as even they recognize. So, yeah. Just either way, referring to the fact that the foundation of the other people groups is not like the foundation that God establishes, so to speak, for his people. Okay, anyway, moving on. Verse 36. Indeed, the Lord will give justice to his people, and he will change his mind about his servants, when he sees their strength is gone and no one is left, slave or free. Then he will ask, where are their gods, the rocks they fled to for refuge? Where now are those gods, who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their offerings? Let those gods arise and help you. Let them provide you with shelter. Look now, I myself am he. There is no other God but me. I am the one who kills and gives life. I am the one who wounds and heals. No one can be rescued from my powerful hand. Now I raise my hand to heaven and declare, as surely as I live, when I sharpen my flashing sword and begin to carry out justice, I will take revenge on my enemies and repay those who reject me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword will devour flesh, the blood of the slaughtered and the captives, and the heads of the enemy leaders. So, yeah, this kind of expands upon the sort of transition of sorts that I was getting to in here, where it's like, okay, yeah, the other people will have their time as well. And then it's like, all right, eventually, yes, once the Israelites have had all these curses that they were warned of, once all these things have happened to them and they've been scattered and made poor, destitute, all these different things, then God will, also seek justice upon the other nations ruling over them. And he will basically, this whole asking where are their gods that they fled to for refuge, almost like a taunting kind of like, okay, the rest of y'all think your gods are so hot, go ahead, see if they can protect you from my judgment. But ultimately, whether God's chosen people or not, God's justice prevails. He's the one who brings judgment, who kills and gives life, who wounds and heals. And basically, all these different things that happen are because of God. And the obedience or disobedience of him. Footnote there. I guess, okay, so indeed the Lord will give justice to his people, and it might read, and he will take revenge for his servants, rather than will change his mind about his servants. So, with that alternate wording, it's almost more so like, all right, the punishment was mine to give to my people. Now, the rest of you are also doing things that I don't like, and you're trying to say that the punishment on my people has come from you. Haha, how dare you be so haughty to think that this is you. So I'm gonna bring it right back on you if you think you're, such hot stuff. Anyway, okay. Wrapping up the Song of Moses here, as it was called. Verse 43. Rejoice with him, you heavens, and let all of God's angels worship him. Rejoice with his people, you Gentiles, and let all the angels be strengthened in him. For he will avenge the blood of his children. He will take revenge against his enemies. He will repay those who hate him, and cleanse his people's land. So Moses came with Joshua son of Nun, and recited all the words of this song to the people. Lots of footnotes in there, good grief. But I also, before I get into those, I think this last bit is kind of reiterating what I was talking about, or, further clarifying what I was talking about, where it's like, all right, judgment on my people or other people, ultimately, I, the one and only true God, am the one who brings about these judgments. So, all of you peoples throughout the world, recognize that. And, it mentions rejoicing with him, I guess, in the day that, Israel and his chosen people are restored, perhaps is where, when, why, that it's saying rejoice. Anyway, footnotes here. So, rejoice with him, you heavens, and let all God's angels worship him. That's as in the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Greek. Masoretic text lacks the first two lines, meaning it lacks this whole sentence, basically? Okay. Again, I'm nowhere near knowledgeable enough to say anything on which of these should be deemed more authoritative, and or which one's necessarily older than the others. Some of these, with how old they are, might be lacking certain portions just due to deterioration over time. But anyway, so that was just saying that this whole part here wasn't necessarily in one of the old texts that's used frequently for translation. Footnote here. Hebrew text lacks this sentence. Okay. So you got one version lacking this part, no other... I shouldn't say version. You got one ancient text lacking this early part, another ancient text lacking this second sentence. Okay, this one's just a difference in wording, where one of the old texts reads his servants rather than his children. And repay those who hate him. Masoretic, once again, lacks this line. So wait. So what? The Masoretic would have included, rejoice with his people, you Gentiles, and let all the angels be strengthened in him. For he will avenge the blood of his servants and cleanse his people's land. Or maybe he will take revenge against his enemies and cleanse his people's land. I don't know. Anyway, not necessarily a really big deal, because it's all still hitting on the same general point. Footnote there is just giving the original Hebrew of what we typically read as Joshua. The Hebrew was actually Hosea, or at least that's what it's kind of understood to be. Or at least that's just what was used in this verse in the early texts. But that's just sort of a variant of the same name anyway, because Hebrew working very differently and not even having vowels. Anyway. Alright. We've finished the song. Time to wrap up. Well, got a couple more little sections before the chapter's done. Verse 45. When Moses had finished reciting all these words to the people of Israel, he added, "Take to heart all the words of warning I have given you today. Pass them on as a command to your children, so they will obey every word of these instructions. These instructions are not empty words. They are your life. By obeying them, you will enjoy a long life in the land you will occupy when you cross the Jordan River." So, Moses now, just after saying all that, basically reminding the people that, like, hey, this is for your benefit. Like, remember this so you know what's going to happen if you disobey God. Alright, and then, verse 48. Wasn't Moses' death already foretold? Anyway. That same day the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Moab, to the mountains east of the river, and climb Mount Nebo, which is across from Jericho. Look out across the land of Canaan, the land I am giving to the people of Israel as their own special possession. Then you will die there on the mountain. You will join your ancestors, just as Aaron your brother died on Mount Hor and joined his ancestors. For both of you betrayed me with the Israelites at the waters of Meribah at Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. You failed to demonstrate my holiness to the people of Israel there. So you will see the land from a distance, but you may not enter the land I am giving to the people of Israel." Okay, so there was a little bit more detail added from previous things, I think, with it specifying going to Moab and climbing Mount Nebo, and that he would get to look on the promised land from there, but that's where he would die. Footnote there at the river, Hebrew says the mountains of Abarim instead of the mountains east of the river. It's highly likely that the mountains in that geographical area today wouldn't go by the same name anyway. But, also I think it's more helpful for us possibly to have an idea of where they are by just saying that they're east of the river. Which means, I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure east of the Jordan River is where they were when all this was said. So, basically, also confirming the fact that Moses wouldn't cross the river to go into the promised land, which was Canaan. And then it gives a reminder / explanation again of why Moses doesn't get to enter the promised land. Footnote there, I almost missed. Hebrew says waters of Meribah Kadesh. Different way of saying the same thing. Anyway. Okay. So that does it for Deuteronomy 32. Alright, so the bulk of the chapter was what is called the Song of Moses. Really, it was supposed to serve as another reminder to the people of, basically what would happen if they did follow God and if they did not follow God. And just the events that would happen around all of that. Even after they turned away how kind of things would turn back in their favor after the fact. So really kind of a prediction as much as anything else. And then the last little bit was talking about Moses' death, basically where and how and why he would end up dying before getting into the promised land. But anyway, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell. If you're on YouTube, to get updates when I post new videos. Give me a follow if you're seeing this over on Rumble. And make sure you look down in the description for info on other social media pages and how to find and follow those. Make sure you leave comments down below there as well. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. But until then, stay cool, people.